Hi all, coffee is considered the most popular drink around the globe and has its roots in the past. Many people start their morning with this invigorating nectar, which gives energy, a great mood and liveliness for the whole day. The history of the origin of coffee is remarkable and replete with interesting facts and legends. And today I will tell you some facts from the world of coffee. Sit back and grab some goodies, we're about to begin. Fact 1. The birthplace of coffee is ancient Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one of the main coffee producers in the world and on the African continent. Coffee trees are far from uncommon in different countries, but they did not appear there long ago. The native plant that gives bitter flavor to Arabica beans is ancient Ethiopia. This is where the trees, from which all varieties originated, were first discovered. Robusta lovers will be surprised to learn that their favorite beverage comes from Africa. The homeland of the Congo coffee tree is the grassy banks of the Congo River. Interestingly, the first time the coffee drink was made was not in Africa, but in ancient Arabia. Africans simply used the bitter beans as a spice in cooking. The largest amount is grown in Brazil, about 3 million tons per year, Vietnam, about 1.8 million tons, Colombia, 800,000 tons. Where coffee beans are planted in special nurseries, providing sufficient light and climatic conditions. Seedlings in 6 months are sent to pre-fertilized fields. The first fruiting begins in 2 years. The coffee beans are harvested by hand, with the help of seasonal workers. Fact 2. The first coffee house in history opened back in 1500. The first information about the coffee drink is found in the thousands of our era. The discoverers of the invigorating nectar were Arabs, who brought the beans from Africa and began to grow them on the Arabian Peninsula. The drink did not resemble the usual coffee, they added cinnamon and ground ginger coffee to the fragrant liquid. From the Arabian Peninsula the coffee tree made its way to the Ottoman Empire. Only in the 16th century did traders begin transporting the beans by sea to Europe. It is said that the first coffee house was opened in 1554 in the Tahtakali area by Harlapli Hakim and Sarili Shems. The first coffee house was opened in Turkey around 1500. In England, coffee appeared much later around 1600. For a long time, only men were allowed to drink the invigorating liquid. In France, the bitter beans have got in 1700 IEs. In Russia the appearance of coffee occurred under Tsar Peter the Great. As historians testify, the drink did not gain much popularity in the country. Tsar Peter had to open special coffee houses and he had to force the subjects to drink the bitter brew, which was how the aromatic liquid was called. Fact number 3. The name of coffee was given by the Arabs. The ancient name coffee entered the English language in 1598 from the Dutch word koffie. Historians have no single opinion about where the name coffee originated from. There are several versions, the most popular and quite plausible is related to the nomadic Arabs. Qawa in Arabic translates to invigorating, giving strength. It was this drink that invigorated the nomads during long migrations. The name remained, but in Western European countries the drink was called café or kafi. Another version is associated with the province of Kaffa. It was here that they first began to grow trees for industrial purposes and named it after their country. The name survived, but was slightly transformed. The fourth fact. The main varieties of coffee are 4, not 2. Arabica, Robusta, Liberica and Excelsa, the 4 types of coffee that grow on the globe. There are 4 varieties of coffee trees in the world. The most common is Arabica, Arabica coffee. It occupies about 70% of the world market and is considered the leader. It has a rich coarse flavor, a pleasant robust taste with a bitterness. It is often used in coffee blends or instant coffee pellets. Robusta is another coffee variety which is considerably inferior to Arabica. It has a sour aroma, the taste is subtle and there is a slight sweetness. It is used pure or mixed with Arabica. The most popular Arabica has a rich, bright aroma and a pleasant, strong taste with a bitterness. Two other lesser-known varieties are Excelsa and Liberica. They have a lot in common with Robusta, but much inferior taste. They are used to give the drink a stronger, more persistent flavor. Fact the fifth. The first coffee was brewed for about 10 hours. Ancient peoples infused coffee for 5 to 8 hours. In ancient times, coffee was made according to a simple recipe, which was used only for medicinal purposes. Whole crude beans which had been previously dried under the hot sunlight were poured over with water, put on the open fire, boiled or simmered for half an hour. The coffee was definitely infused for 5 to 8 hours. The coffee had spices, cardamom, ginger, cinnamon powder, added to it. The brewed tincture resembled the usual green tea and had no particular strength. It was not until the 7th century that they began to dry and roast coffee beans. A few decades later, kernels were invented to peel, roast on an open fire and pre-crush. The principle of making the drink had not changed. They poured the coffee grounds in water, subjected them to boiling and infused. The only difference was that the liquid was more aromatic and strong and acquired a dark tint. Coffee was drunk hot or cold and sweet ingredients were added, sugar, honey. The pour did without sweets, consuming only the bitter liquid, often made from poorly refined beans. Don't forget to like this vid and subscribe to the channel, I will be very pleased. Fact 6. The structure of the coffee berry includes 4 layers. Usually there are 2 grains in a coffee berry, but sometimes only one develops during pollination. The coffee berry, regardless of the tree variety, has 4 layers in structure. The top layer is a silvery, thin skin that covers the bean. During roasting, the film turns into a fragile husk, which easily falls off the walls of the main part. Parchment shell is the next layer of the berry, quite tough and dense. The purpose of the parchment is to protect the inner part from damage, temperature changes. Peeling of the parchment shell is usually carried out before transporting the grains, in order to save the goods from loss or spoilage. Another layer of the berry is the gluten, which has a high percentage of sugar content. Often the glutinous shell is confused with the core. Gluten is not removed when peeling the grains. The amount determines the sweetness or bitterness of the drink. The core of the berry is the pulp. It is this part that is used in the preparation of traditional coffee. Coffee is a real cornucopia of nutrients. The composition of berries includes vitamins, B1, B6, PP, caffeine, tannins, carbohydrates, minerals, potassium, iron, zinc, calcium, proteins. It is believed that the higher the coffee tree grows, the more aromatic beverage is obtained from its beans. The beans also contain a high percentage of acids, which, when cooked, give the drink a persistent strong aroma. Fact 7. The traditional way of preparation was invented by the Arabs. At first, quality green grains were roasted until brown. From the Arabs have preserved quite a few recipes for making a fragrant drink. The process of brewing coffee was transformed into a real action, which took at least an hour. Only high-quality beans were used and green ones were obligatory. Clay cups were 1/3 full of green beans and covered with red-hot charcoal from fruit trees. The next step was roasting until brown. Each seed was taken out and carefully inspected. If any part of it was burnt or not properly cooked, the raw material was thrown away. After brewing in the mortar, the coffee was poured into little cups and served at once. The roasted kernels were pounded to a fine powder resembling dust using a wooden mortar. They poured the necessary amount of coffee in a mortar with cold water and placed it on low heat. The beverage was not allowed to boil but just to stew. The prepared aromatic liquid was poured into a large clay vessel, infused for a while, poured into small cups, and served immediately to the table. Fact 8. The first interesting legend associated with coffee. The properties of coffee were first known to the Ethiopian herdsman Kaldi, who noticed that his goats became energetic after consuming berries from an unfamiliar tree. There are quite a few legends associated with the coffee drink. One of the most interesting has to do with the discovery of coffee. The legend has it that goats are to be thanked for this refreshing drink, since they were instrumental in discovering the properties of the berries from the coffee tree. One day, a shepherd grazing animals in a coffee tree noticed that the goats were happily munching on the leaves and red fruit of the tree. At night, the shepherd was in for a surprise. The goats did not even think of lying down. They moved about briskly and showed no signs of fatigue. The frightened man shared his observations with the abbot of a monastery not far from the pasture. The monastery decided to take advantage of the coffee's properties. A berry-based brew was given to the monks, who had to stay up all night in prayer. Only many years later did the clergy learn to roast the kernels, grind them and prepare the invigorating nectar. Fact number 9. Each worker collects up to 700 kilograms of beans a day at the plantation. Coffee beans are harvested only by hand. It is often mistakenly thought that coffee berries grow on shrubs. Valuable plant material used to make the invigorating liquid is harvested from trees. The plants are able to grow up to 10 meters, to grow a gorgeous huge crown. It is difficult to pick berries from large trees. Special equipment is required, so as early as 3 to 4 years after planting seedlings start pruning. The optimal height of the plants is 3 to 4 meters. Gathering is carried out only by hand. Beans are sent in large wicker baskets, holding about 100 kilograms of raw materials. One worker is able to collect up to 7 such baskets per day. The payment for the work is rather high, $8 to $10 for one basket. From one mature coffee tree can be harvested up to 1.5 thousand berries a year. Coffee trees can be up to 70 years old. The greatest amount of fruit is harvested in the first 10 years after the beginning of fruiting. With each year the plants give less and less grains, so it is impractical to keep the trees for a long time. In 20 to 25 years after planting, uproot, fertilize the soil and plant young seedlings. Fact 10. Bach and Voltaire were coffee addicts. Voltaire lived to the age of 84, despite the fact that the doctor promised the philosopher an early death because of his passion for coffee. History tells us that many famous people preferred coffee to other drinks. One of them was the French philosopher Voltaire, who believed that he owed his remarkable achievements to the aromatic nectar. Voltaire used to drink up to 50 cups a day, and this passion took up most of his earnings, so heirs were left with only small savings. Johann Sebastian Bach was also considered a true coffee gourmet, fond of drinking the invigorating liquid. The composer was only slightly behind philosopher Voltaire in coffee consumption. The great musician had only 15 to 20 cups of the strong drink per day. In the 1700s Bach composed the famous coffee cantata, dedicated to the bitter nectar. The work has humorous overtones. It celebrates the necessity for the human body and a certain dependence on coffee. And so, that's all the facts for today. End of first part. Facts about coffee. If you like the video, like, subscribe to the channel, comment. I'm very pleased to hear your opinion on the video.